All right, thank you. Thank you. I hope everyone enjoyed their lunch. We'll try to keep it exciting so that there's no napping in the audience today, please. My name is Pierre Auchard. I'm the host of today's panel. And first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers of the conference. This has been an amazing conference, bringing together people from all around the world, all over the industry. I'm an advisor to Riot Blockchain, and I'm a product manager at Kraken. But enough about me. Let's go to Kevin Zhang. Here is the Senior Vice President of Mining Strategy at Foundry. So that's huge. Since 2014, Kevin has built several large-scale Bitcoin mining facilities and worked closely with mining equipment manufacturers, mining pools, and data center operators. If you want to network, come network with Kevin after the panel. Lots of people are going to be rushing up to you for a handshake, Kevin.
Yeah, for sure. I'll just add in that we do have a lounge right above the stage, so please swing on by after the talk.
Fantastic. We've got Andy. Andy Long is the CEO of White Rock Management, a pure-play industrial-scale miner with operations in Sweden and the USA. He's been mining since 2013 and was the founding CEO of Hydro 66, the award-winning hydro-powered hosting and mining data center in the north of Sweden, bringing a European perspective to this panel. Thank you for joining us, Andy. We got Sam Wang. He serves as the Regional General Manager of Easy2Mine, a trusted one-stop Bitcoin mining service provider, previously known as WAYI. He is currently developing the company's mining business in North America. Welcome to North America.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Samir Tabar, the Chief Strategy Officer at Bitdigital, a large-scale public Bitcoin miner listed under NASDAQ. Previously, Sam served as co-founder of Fluidity, which was acquired by Consensus. He also ran capital strategy for Bank of America Merrill Lynch and started his career as an attorney at Skadden Arps. Welcome, Samir.
Thank you.
All right. I think that with the news last year, when we think about geopolitics and Bitcoin mining, the first thing that comes to mind is China. So I'm going to throw a question to Sam. What are your thoughts on China's ban on Bitcoin mining?
Let's look at the whole picture. It's actually not just a ban on Bitcoin mining, but also a ban on crypto trading. So unfortunately, it's related. So for the trading, the Central Bank of China has never been friendly to it since 2013. So the reason is quite straightforward because decentralized nature of the Bitcoin is out of control to a regime that has certain level of control of capital. As for the mining, frankly speaking, we were expecting certain level of regulations on mining, but not a blanket one so soon. I think the reason, we were not a policymaker, but I think here are the contributing factors. One is actually the BTC mining actually create the demand for trading. So at least the traders, they will buy the crypto coins from the miners, and that will create a market for that. So that's something the government don't want to see. The secondly is actually the Bitcoin mining is actually consuming lots of energy, which is not good for the energy policy for China. Last but not least, it's a blanket ban. The reason for that is the central government want to cascade some policy to across the whole levels. In China, you need to leave no room for misinterpretation, unintentionally or intentionally. So yeah, that's my thoughts about it.
Awesome. Samir, would you like to add some?
Yeah, I think China made a mistake. They banned an entire sector. They had over 50% of the global hash rate just a year ago. This year, they're less than 1%. And now the United States, this has been a tremendous gift for the U.S. The U.S. now has well over 50% of the global hash rate. And China abandoned an entire sector. That sector moved and migrated to the United States mostly. In our case, in fact, at Bitdigital, before the China ban, a lot of our fleet happened to be in China, and we wanted jurisdictional diversification. So what we did is we started the migration of our fleet, tens of thousands of machines. We created a corridor between China to the United States and started that migration. That was wonderful foresight, thanks to our co-founders. Once that ban was announced, we already had a very solid process, and we just pulled forward in time that entire fleet deployment, and we now have absolutely nothing in China, fortunately, and everything is now in the United States. And in a way, it's poetic justice. If you think about it, in fact, a lot of our machines are in places where it used to be the center of gravity, like in upstate New York. Buffalo used to be the center of gravity for manufacturing. That went to China after NAFTA. NAFTA gives up the sector. A lot of that actually comes back to the States. A lot of our operations with our partners with Block Fusion, we now create jobs where jobs are sorely needed, where jobs used to be in that center of gravity for manufacturing, but now we have a sector of the future that's replaced that. So yeah, China made a mistake. Great gift to the United States.
Andy, do you think the EU is going to make a similar mistake? We've been hearing noise about legislation there.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing with the EU is it kind of moves slowly, and it's a double-edged sword, because while the EU loves a bit of regulation and loves a bit of standardization,
they want to be number one at regulation. That's what their claim to fame.
let's do GDPR again. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember what your inbox was like, 2 years ago? I mean, I still get websites I have to jump on my VPN to access random news site in the US because they don't want the obligation. So look, the EU loves the regulation, but it also means that individual countries find it harder to make kind of ad hoc bans because they have to not provide barriers to industries wanting to operate in the EU. So what we see is that I guess people who don't fully understand the situation will make ill-advised suggestions, and then they'll go to the EU Council, they'll be debated, and then normally they're knocked down and sometimes they move forward. So we saw last month there was the threat of a generalized ban on non-green cryptocurrency, not just mining, but activity in the EU. If a crypto or if a blockchain didn't comply with a green standard that was actually unspecified at that time. And that was rejected, thankfully. But we do still have the specter of some quite onerous anti-money laundering and KYC regulation that's coming through. That is now going into kind of discussions. It's probably 2 years before it really kicks in. So it's an ongoing challenge, but actually when most of the time we see saner heads prevail in the EU. So you do have a bit of regulatory certainty because it's so slow moving.
It's interesting that even when they're talking about AML regulations, which aren't really related to mining in particular, they still bring up the environmental arguments of, hey, look, there's an environmental cost to this, and thus any way we can regulate it is fair game. Samir, do you think that the Green parties and folks who are prioritizing environmentalism, are they always going to be opposed to Bitcoin mining, or are there persuasive arguments on the other side?
I find there's a double standard between our sector. Our sector happens to be a sector that uses renewables more than any other sector that I know of, which is really strange. The Green parties and the Green movement should be completely behind Bitcoin mining, since we are providing an example of how to use renewables. So it's a little funny to me that is happening. What I think is really happening is that you have these people who, a lot of people who criticize Bitcoin mining about the environmental issue never cared about the environment in the first place. They're just using this fake environmental argument. They're, excuse the pun, gaslighting the public into thinking that we're bad for the environment. Nothing could be further from the truth. Green energy, if it's not used, is wasted. So Bitcoin miners are monetizing that waste, and it makes no sense to me. In our case, with respect to Bitdigital, we have a mission to make sure that we use renewables only. We're not carbon neutral. We don't believe in carbon neutrality. We believe in carbon free. There's a big difference. Carbon neutrality, you're you're burning fossil fuels, and you're buying a certificate to neutralize the bad thing you did. That's like taking a giant crap in a room and using an air freshener. Doesn't make sense. So we're carbon free. We're very proud of that. Today, we're almost 70% carbon free.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'll also chime in real quick too that, so we're fortunate at Foundry to run one of the largest mining pools in the world. Foundry USA pool, which is also based out of Western New York. And the data is all largely on our side, right? We had a snapshot study at the end of 2021, and 69% of our pool, and it's not a meme, 69% of our pool is using non-fossil fuel-based energy. And a large portion of it is stranded and otherwise wasted. So a lot of it's educating policymakers and regulators on, hey, you gotta better understand this sector before you kind of issue moratoriums or blanket bans, et cetera, right? Mayor Eric Adams, he takes his paycheck in Bitcoin. He says he loves Bitcoin, but he doesn't like mining. So you can see there's clearly a very large knowledge gap still.
Right. And other than just a blanket mining ban, what are some of the other risks you see out there, Kevin, with regards to geopolitics and regulation?
Well, I think we touched on it a little bit, right? Where it is, there is the ESG narrative and how do we all address it, right? Not only is it on the environmental side, there's also the social side too. With what's going on with Ukraine, right? There's plenty of mining activities all across Eastern Europe. So how do we navigate through that? Bit River is one of our close friends, and they host a plethora of different customers from all over the world, right? So it's navigating and kind of educating people that actually Bitcoin shouldn't be politicized, right? It's apolitical. It's for everyone, right? And then there's also centralization risk on, okay, it's too many going to one sector, it's too many going into one region, and a lot of it's FUD, right? It's education again. I think there's gonna be a very strong narrative that, ironically, so much of it was in China previously, and everyone said China controlled Bitcoin. Clearly they didn't, right? People are gonna start saying the US controls Bitcoin. But the US operates very differently from China, right? It's a republic. All the states manage themselves very independently and differently. I think a great analogy and example is we have medicinal marijuana use or even marijuana legalization that's still being passed through the federal level, but at the state level, you have plenty of states have already legalized it, right? So it's actually very decentralized by nature, just from the individual provinces or the states that Bitcoin mining is gravitating to.
Well, just to add on that, actually, I think the supply chain issue is also very related to the geopolitical risk. So we suffer that a lot because we are migrating the hash rating to US, and we need to like ship the miners here, and also sometimes ship the containers here. Like the sea shipping takes forever, and then the construction in the US, they're purchasing lots of components from China. You have to wait for a long time. So the geopolitical risk actually is also causing some constraint on the supply chain.
I think what Sam mentioned, there's this trend that I see on Twitter. They talk about the movement of deglobalization. You know, everybody in this room, we grew up in an era where everything became globalized and the internet made this world even more globalized. But I think it started during the Trump era where the deglobalization movement happened, where people are now starting to look inward, the whole Russia and Ukraine thing, China just, putting its virtual walls. We're seeing a new era of deglobalization, and that affects what Sam was talking about with respect to the supply chain.
Right. I think the strongest example is the U.S.-China trade war tariffs, right?
There's another great example of deglobalization.
Yeah, it's quite costly when it's an extra 25% price tag from importing anything from China.
So. Right.
Yeah.
And that affects mining rig market?
Absolutely. And the market, I think, is efficient. It's just, it takes time, right? A lot of the manufacturing from China has gravitated now towards Southeast Asia. You have manufacturing in Malaysia and Thailand and other regions, and I think over time there's going to be manufacturing here in North America as well.
And so with the manufacturing part, we recently had the news of Intel coming out with their ASIC. Does that help with diversification, with decentralization, with regards to, I know TSMC has been a major fab?
So yeah, I think I can take a stab at it first. I'll say that I think it's terrific. New competitors and new entrants in the space leads to more competitive offerings, right? So I think it's terrific. I think there's an uphill battle for Intel because the incumbents typically have a very long advantage and lead as far as the research technology, and as well as kind of proven model and units that are kind of already energized on shelves. Oftentimes you'll see specs in over promises when people are releasing a new product. So I really would love to kind of work closely with Intel, kind of get them integrated and kind of up to speed on kind of the space and the nature of our industry, because it's very, very competitive, right? We were gifted not only kind of the opportunity to bring a lot of mining to North America with the China ban, But we were also gifted with 50, 60% discount on Bitcoin mining, right? When half the competition drops off, the mining economics are much, much, much looser, right? So is their offering going to be cost competitive, not just efficient enough, right? So I think that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Any other thoughts on Intel? And
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the difference between the ASIC market today and where we were in 2013, 14 is when you built an ASIC back then, and there were many ASIC manufacturers looking to raise 20 million to do a tape out and all the rest of it, is you built a machine and it would last for 1 year.
Right.
Because the next generation would come out, it would be an order of magnitude more powerful. And so we've had a period of, one manufacturer dominating and producing fabulous equipment, and that's great. But because the hardware lasts longer now, there's an opportunity for large manufacturers, especially those that are investing in new foundries in the US, to challenge that. I think we might see margins compressed. But going back to the geopolitical side, we only have to look at what happened in China, what happened in Kazakhstan recently, to show how resilient the network is. It's the old chestnut, the network interprets censorship as damage and routes around it. So Bitcoin as a network is resilient to the largest country of mining, banning it. Everybody went to another country and then exited that. Some of those guys went to Russia and then regretted it. So we can be confident that the network is resilient against really any nation state deciding that they don't like it.
With regards to the centralization of the manufacturing part, how big is the secondary market relative to the primary market for rigs? Because that contributes to decentralization as well.
Well, I think there is definitely a spot market, but you need to have certain abilities to really access it. A lot of the spot market is actually done in China. In fact, one of the secret sauces for Bitdigital is that we have a team in China where we're very well connected there, and we can penetrate that spot market, which is actually quite interesting given the China ban. And so if you have that linguistic ability and the know-how and the relationships, the spot market in China is pretty interesting, and it's been a great situation for us. If you think about it, when you buy from the manufacturers, you have to wait 6 months, if that. Spot market, possession immediately. Very different investment, return on investment.
It's a great opportunity for us to kind of plug our latest business service, which is Foundry X, which is a trading desk and marketplace for buying new and used ASIC equipment, right? A lot of it is figuring out the right counterparties to work with. There's a lot of risk. Not only are you paying oftentimes 6 to 9 months for pre-orders in advance, sometimes you just get scammed, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes people don't deliver or hold up their end of the bargains, or the relationships aren't there. So it's good to work with a trusted counterparty like ours or others out there that are proven.
Yeah. And look, there's volatility in the spot market just as there is in the Bitcoin price. If you follow Buffett's advice and you're fearful when others are greedy and you're greedy when others are fearful, you could have filled your boots with S9s for $20 not that long ago.
And those are going to last years.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. No, go ahead.
Yeah, it's also for us, Easy to Mine used to operate under the brand name of YE. So we have been selling and trading second-handed machines for 5 to 6 years. And last year, because of the ban, so actually many miners, they have to dispose their miners, so it's very active in that market. So we're trying to see if there's any opportunity here in the US as well in the future.
I was purchasing used S7s from his boss, Lee. This is 4 or 5 years ago, so trusted counterparty right here.
Are they still running, or are they in the landfill now?
So they were part of the kind of collateral damage of the China blanket bans. But like you mentioned earlier, you guys are migrating a lot of your operations to North America.
Yes.
Excellent. Sam, I've got another question for you. On ESG, we mentioned social. How does Bitcoin mining affect local economies?
Yeah, I can just yeah. I can just share one of my experience. It's actually a very dramatic site visiting experience. It's I visit some mining site in very remote area, in the mountainous area. We have to drive 6 hours in a mountain. It's only one lane into a valley. There's a mining site there. So it's good for the local economy. In my mind, it's because it's not on the grid. So, and also it's because it's the wet season, they have the hydropower, it's going to be wasted anyway. So if you utilize that to mine, will help the local people and the employment as well.
You mentioned that it's not on the grid, and we hear people talk about the risks of on-grid versus off-grid mining with regards to geopolitics. How do you analyze that trade-off?
Yeah, people always say there's pros and cons. For me, we based on our experience, because we have a lot of experience in mining in Sichuan, which is like a perfect place for hydropower, and so it's riskier for the off-grid mining because the risk comes with the return because the price of the utility is much cheaper, but you lack the transparency of the rating of the rates, and also you don't know if the supplier has full compliance with local policy. And I think the third one is not stable because it depends on like if it's raining or not. So in general, I think the on-the-grid is more stable, and that's what we are looking for in U.S. and in North America for now. Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, I've got a question for Samir. I think this is top of mind for folks. El Salvador, is it an opportunity or is it mostly marketing?
El Salvador made a big splash last year by accepting Bitcoin as legal tender. That's a separate topic from Bitcoin mining, two different things. We were actually invited to El Salvador as a government official delegation, and my CEO, Brian Bullitt, and I, we went there about a year ago, roughly. And it was really interesting to see their infrastructure. It's really at early stages. But it's very interesting because they have volcanic geothermal energy, which is similar to what Iceland has. But again, the infrastructure is not there yet. But great promises. They're creating Bitcoin City. They're building, that infrastructure around the volcano. They're building this city, very friendly towards Bitcoin. My slight concern is if this particular administration is voted out one day, will the next administration do like a violent U-turn on Bitcoin? So I don't know what will happen. But the current administration, we should all be very supportive because this country is a case study of what that leadership has done, and it's really admirable. El Salvador was basically never talked about before the president did that, and now it's on everyone's map. They're looking at it very closely, and if they succeed, we all succeed. So I'm very supportive.
Excellent. So on this topic of friendly jurisdictions, I'd be interested in all of your thoughts on the friendliest and the least friendly. We'll start with you, Kevin, if you...
Yeah, sure. So if you take a friendly jurisdiction, I think Texas, everyone's very familiar with, right? You have, you have the leader of ERCOT going on publicly saying we welcome Bitcoin miners. It leads to grid stability, right? They're really taking the time to educating themselves on what Bitcoin mining actually has to offer. Whereas you have other jurisdictions, like unfortunately like New York State, where we're from, where they're constantly trying to add moratoriums, blanket bans, et cetera. And once again, they're not even asking their constituents. It was one of the first ban attempts they had last year. It was the union electrical workers that came out in defense of the Bitcoin mining activities. They were very enthused by all the economic stimulus that we created, right? Even though like a mining operation may only employ 20 to 30 full-time employees, it's in the hundreds when you factor in the contractors, the engineers, and everyone that goes into getting the project off the ground, right? So these are oftentimes very distressed economic zones where they could greatly benefit from Bitcoin mining. So yeah, Texas on one end, New York on another.
Miami.
Mayor Suarez is awesome.
And look, it's not just countries, it's down to individual municipalities,
right.
or communes in Sweden. So I mean, like the US is great, Sweden is great. But if you start looking at individual parts of those countries, you immediately get a sense when you visit a potential site. Are these guys trying to be helpful? Are they facilitating investment? Or do they say, oh, here's some guys from out of town with a checkbook, right? How much can we fleece these guys for? We've, for 10 years now, anybody with a field and a power line over their head has been marketing themselves as a data center campus. And it's, we've got 200 megawatts and it's only 12 months away. When we first went to the north of Sweden in my old company, we were locating 2 megawatts, which is nothing today, but it was a lot in 2013, right? And we looked at this brownfield site and we said, oh, this is okay, it's going to need some fiber running in. I'm not sure about it. We went back to visit it that afternoon and they were already digging the trench. We hadn't signed anything, we hadn't committed to anything, but that was the difference. And this is Bowden, which is, we're there now with White Rock, Hive are our neighbors there. The community there have embraced it. And because companies have come in and invested and are good citizens and good partners with the municipality, they've then invested in new infrastructure. They built a 150 megawatt substation because we turned up. And it's a virtuous circle. We heard from Riot this morning about the number of jobs that's being created in Rockdale. So these are positive effects that you get in those locations. On the flip side, you can be kind of passive aggressive. You can say, oh, come along, and then, oh, we've just increased the energy tax, or we've just made things difficult in some other way. And or we're going to ban proof of work. So what's going to happen if you ban proof of work in a jurisdiction where the power is 100% green? The miners aren't going to say, hey, well, we'll just turn this stuff off and put it in a skip. No, they're going to move it somewhere else, and probably somewhere that isn't 100% green. So what's the net effect of the policy decision you're making is probably counterproductive, especially to the point you made about the power being stranded. There isn't always enough grid to take these renewables somewhere else, or the renewables aren't being fully exploited. You can ramp up the power and use it to the net benefit for everybody.
Yeah. Sam, do you have some friendly jurisdictions you're excited about?
Okay, yeah. So coming out of China with like a blanket ban, it seems like everywhere is blanket.
A low bar.
World is oyster.
Just kidding. So I think in the short term, like we are like looking for opportunities in Southeast Asia and also the North America.
Where in Southeast Asia?
Indonesia. Yeah, it's mainly Indonesia, and North America, and in the long run, I think. But within US, we're still new here, so we're still navigating through the different policies through the states. But in general, like outside China, everything seems to be more friendly.
Yeah.
For miners.
I guess I'll go. The way Bitdigital approaches it, we have the 3 Ps. We look at power, pricing, and policy. So in any jurisdiction, we have to look at what's the power that's normally used. For us, it's got to be renewables. That's the policy we have. Then the second P is pricing. We have to make sure that the pricing makes a lot of sense. And then policy, what's the government policy? So if you look at China, obviously not happening. And then you look at the other extreme, which today, I guess maybe the other end of the barbell is probably Texas, the opposite of China in terms of policy. So very friendly policy. El Salvador, very friendly. There are some risks with respect to El Salvador, the ones I mentioned. But you have to look at the policy of the government. I just want to say, maybe not completely related, it's really unfortunate when we come across policies from certain governments, whether at the state level, provincial, federal, national, or senators in the US playing games with this whole politics on the environmental stuff. And I think there is, I'm going to say maybe some controversial things, but I think that certain environmental groups are probably corrupted. I will say that, Larson is now funding a Greenpeace campaign. Larson is the chairman of Ripple. Billions and billions of dollars of his net worth is in a competing coin. He wants Bitcoin to have less of a market share. He wants Ripple to go up. And so he's funding this campaign called Change the Code. Everybody knows that's not actually technically possible. But it's a disingenuous campaign that he's funding for millions of dollars, and Greenpeace is going with it because he's a big donor. There is a problem there. There is a conflict of interest. And you see people like certain senators in the US, playing games on that whole politics. I think the big mistake that this sector did is that word, mining. We should not have used that word. We should have used generator, digital generator of assets, farming,
hashing.
But this fucking word actually created problems.
Yeah.
And it's all about optics, and language and words have a lot of power. And I think this is the source of the issue. Because if you think about mining, it conjures up these Charles Dickens sort of, kids going into mining. Nobody has positive feelings from the word mining. So I think we made a mistake there. I don't know who actually started that word. It's catchy, but was pretty negative.
I think we've got to blame the genius Satoshi Nakamoto.
Dude, Satoshi came up with it.
Yeah.
Who is this guy anyway?
This guy.
I think Jameson Lob actually offered to change the code for 4.9 million and then see which is like almost all the budget, and then see if anybody runs it. They can watch the tumbleweed roll past,
No, agreed.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. We do need to rebrand it. I like all the pictures that come out of these mining facilities where it's clean, it's organized, it's computers on racks, and it's
Computers on racks.
Yeah.
It's not actually mining.
Right.
If you think about it, Bitcoin is like a perfect proxy for gold. And I'm really heartened by the fact that the younger generation is using Bitcoin, has normalized Bitcoin as in terms of their investment process. Eventually, this younger generation will be in the levers of power when it comes to family offices, portfolio construction. So instead of using gold as an inflation hedge, they would have normalized Bitcoin, which is a much better proxy from an environmental standpoint. And by the way, we have enough gold for the next 100 years. We don't need to mine more gold. And gold is a completely destructive process with respect to the environment. I don't see Greenpeace talking about that for some reason. So there is a problem here.
Agree. Gold, all the chemicals that go into the actual gold mining site, not even to count the carbon emissions of the transportation and all of that.
It's a useless yellow metal that causes a lot of evil in the world.
It's beautiful, though.
Yeah, sure.
That's the only thing it's got going for it. Yeah. Okay, so not to dunk on gold too much.
Sorry.
Well, you're right. So one of the other parts of hashing that goes into this is, does it raise electricity rates in local grids? And is that causing political opposition to Bitcoin hashing?
I don't think it does, and in fact, it can have the opposite effect. It can reduce power costs, and it can make the grid more stable. So, what do power generators like? They like stable demand. They don't like peaky demand. And what is hashing? About brute forcing, call it what you will. It's predictable load that just sits there and uses the power, but which can be turned off in a couple of seconds to deal with grid disruption, to stabilize the frequency. So we saw the big miners in Texas during the recent storms be responsible citizens, turn off their equipment for a couple of days, and help the grid stabilize. This is positive. If you're looking to invest in new generation, whether it's solar or wind or new hydro or nuclear, whatever, the more base load you have, the more you incentivize that. In the US, there is a surplus of energy production, right? And you need it to cover the peaks in the middle of the day for aircon, whatever it happens to be. If you've got more base load that will take that and buy it on a PPA for 5 years or 10 years, whatever, then you can fill your boots and build more generation. So it's a positive thing, not a negative.
Absolutely. And I had to experience the power outage last year in Texas, and so very grateful for the build out over there to stabilize the grid. Any final remarks? We're at the 5-minute mark here.
Oh, wow. Let's get questions from the audience.
Is that serious? Do we have the ability to get questions from the audience?
Let's do it.
We have 2 mics.
Nice.
We got 2 mics.
There we
Excellent.
go.
Love it.
We're talking about geopolitical risk. Just before we came on,
Hard questions.
the guy over there said 4-minute
Over there.
warning, and I was like, wait a minute, 4-minute warning in this environment? It's something I don't know.
Hi, my name is Harrison Martinez. I'm a Bitcoin miner, independent Bitcoin miner, but I'm also from El Salvador. So I was curious to know, as commercial level Bitcoin miners, is there appetite? Would there be appetite on your part to help make the necessary energy infrastructure investments in El Salvador to first and foremost electrify the country, provide homes and businesses and communities with the electricity they need, but then also to utilize some of that excess capacity for Bitcoin mining? Just curious to know what that concept would sound like.
Is your question, what does it take for a large-scale miner to invest in infrastructure in El Salvador?
Yes.
The president's creating all the right conditions. I think at the moment he's unfortunately distracted by gang warfare. And so, that's a problem in El Salvador. Nobody wants to be in a country and be subjected to any type of physical risk. But I've been there, and the media headlines about El Salvador is greatly exaggerated. It's not, as you know, it's not like, there's a chance of you getting shot in Harlem or Brooklyn, where I used to live. So it's not, El Salvador is not special in the sense of the risk of violence, but it is a problem. And I just wish the president, best of luck in controlling that, because he has a great thing going. And if he continues this very friendly policy, and if Bitcoin City gets built, and if the infrastructure is, if that bond gets passed and it funds, the infrastructure that's needed, a lot of, large-scale miners such as Bitdigital would absolutely be interested.
Yeah, I mean, and the point that you made about enhancing the grid, one of the things about on-grid versus off-grid is if you use an energy source that is stable, like geothermal, drill a hole and put water down it and you get steam out the other end,
right.
That just runs, and you don't need to be on the grid if you've got enough power to run the equipment, dig the hole, get the steam, make the power, happy days.
Yeah.
Because grids take longer to build than generation.
Right, and I think the key word, this is based off what you were saying, Andy, too, is it's controllable load, right? So anything that's controllable load can incentivize further electrical development, and it doesn't have to rely solely on subsidies. So you can not only have incentives and synergies with Bitcoin mining, you can also develop your grid as well, right? And I think as long as the physical jurisdiction is stable and safe, that's why many other regions are starting to look at Bitcoin mining.
Great question. We've got another hand raised over here. Or there, yeah, sorry.
Hello. What's your view on home mining and its potential to decentralize the hash rate in particular?
We love home mining here. Yes.
Home mining's awesome. I posted a picture on my Twitter just before the session of the first miner that I bought. And it made 0.2 of a Bitcoin in 2013, and it paid for itself. And then I sold the miner for more than I paid for it on eBay. So, if you go back to the white paper, every node is out there, everyone is mining. It doesn't matter if you can't find a block by yourself these days. Use a pool. Home mining is awesome.
I think I'm talking too much, but I'm the spirit. I completely agree with the spirit of home mining, and decentralization is a passion of mine. I love seeing things that are decentralized. I just think it's hard to be commercially viable these days if your scale isn't a certain size. But so I support home mining all day long.
And you can use the heat as well. I mean, rather than just putting electricity into a resistive load.
They're doing that in Vancouver, actually.
Yeah, if you can take the heat and put the miner somewhere where the noise isn't going to disturb you, take the hot air, take it into your house or your greenhouse or whatever, happy days.
Yeah.
My favorite use case was heating your pool using your mining rigs.
New form of immersion mining.
Yeah, I thought that was brilliant. Someone needs to productize it, because I looked and, hey, maybe I could do this. And then I start watching the YouTube video of how the guy did it. I was like, I'm not an electrician. I'm not a plumber. I can't do all of this. But maybe that'll be a use case commercially.
Yes, also I like home mining too, because the founder of our company used to be a home miner. He started a business by doing home mining at 6 or 7 years ago. So yeah, just hope we can do it again.
And it can provide an opportunity to learn and then scale up to a commercial level. I think that all of today's commercial miners started there, right? It's a way of bootstrapping and learning.
Yeah, so for me, it was mining that actually showed me that Bitcoin is actually backed by something. And what is this magic internet money that everyone's talking about back in the day, right? So for me, seeing a miner and actually producing proof of work, that's what made it real for me. And the one piece of advice I'll give to home miners is definitely try your best to be contrarian, right? Don't get FOMO when everyone else wants to get into mining and you see these big announcements, massive orders. That's when you probably want to scale back a little bit or buy used equipment. Yeah. It's when no one else wants to be mining. It's no different than public companies and large miners as well, but be contrarian. Timing is very critical in the space, regardless if you're a big scale or a small miner.
Great point. One last question.
All right. Hello.
Canada or Latin America? Any quick thoughts on? Sorry, we'll get your question. I promise.
You know, I like Canada,
Yep.
and depending on the part of Canada, there's parts of Canada that maybe 2 or 3 years ago were in the kind of how much can we take these guys for mode, and there's parts of Canada that are very attractive for miners. So I think we'll see more miners going to Canada as well as in the US. Latin America, there's definitely opportunities as well, but I can't give you a list of countries.
So after the US, Canada is our biggest partner from our pool's perspective, as well as our financing and kind of our hosting providers. We love working with Canada at Foundry.
Awesome. All right, one last question, and then we'll be done.
All right. Thanks you guys for coming here to Miami. I'm a local. I head up Logos Capital. We're focused a lot on impact investing, so this is a really great panel for me to listen in on. I'm also the chairman of the Government Blockchain Association, so I've been flown down to give a lot of presentations and workshops for governments, both in Florida and the US and Latin America, so it's a great question. And one of the people that I go and speak to are central banks. So from that point of view, I'm very interested in asking you guys, how do you see any difference or any conversations happening with and or around central banks, and any engagement with central banks in your conversations, or any opinions on anything related to International Monetary Fund and sort of how sovereign governments with their own sovereign funds might want to interact, besides just also using the mechanism of the central bank?
So I don't call them central banks. I call them fiat miners. Are they going to start mining Bitcoin too?
No. Go ahead. If you don't go, I'll go.
No thoughts on fiat mining.
No major comment here besides, like, I think nation states and sovereign wealth funds, they're absolutely looking at Bitcoin mining, right? Anyone that's got excess power that's cheap or it's dormant, you'd be foolish not to look at it, right? Our CEO, Mike Collier, always says Bitcoin mining is ruthless in its drive for cost efficiency. So we're going to seek out where the power is cheapest and where it makes economic sense.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you all for joining us today. And thank you to our panelists and the conference organizers.
Thank you.
Cheers.